It's already been 6 hours, and this song still won't let go. It loops in your head again and again, the same few seconds, the same fragment on repeat. You try to work, to fall asleep, to think about anything else, but your brain just digs in. No, one more time. And here's an interesting question. Why does it get stuck on just a short piece and not the whole song from start to finish? This phenomenon is called an earworm. And if you think it's some personal quirk of yours, here's a fact that might surprise you. It happens to almost everyone. Researcher Vicky Williamson ran a large citizen science project. She asked thousands of people about songs that got stuck in their heads. When it happened, what might have triggered it, how long it lasted. About 90% of people said they experienced this regularly, most often within the last day or two. And her data also revealed an interesting pattern. Earworms usually don't show up when you're fully absorbed in a demanding task. They arrive in the gaps, in the shower, on a walk, before sleep, lying in bed, behind the wheel on a familiar road you've driven 100 times. In other words, exactly when there's a little free space in your head and your thoughts start wandering on their own. This hints at something important. An earworm doesn't necessarily force its way into your attention. More often, it simply fills the space that just became free. So this isn't a rare glitch, and it's not some strange quirk of a few unlucky people. It's an almost universal property of a brain that processes music. And here, the obvious question arises. Why music specifically? Your brain doesn't loop a paragraph from a book you read yesterday, word for word, on an endless cycle. It doesn't run a phone number, a shopping list, or a random conversation on repeat. So what is it about a short musical phrase that makes the brain treat it so differently? Part of the answer comes from the work of researcher James Kellaris. He studied why some songs hook harder than others and called it the cognitive itch theory. Here's the gist of it. When the brain listens to music, it's constantly predicting what comes next. Simple, repetitive melodies are easy to predict, but it's usually not the simplest songs that get stuck, and not the most complex ones either. They're somewhere in between. A melody that's mostly clear and predictable, but with one small element of surprise, a slightly odd interval, an unusual rhythm, a phrase that seems just about to resolve but doesn't quite. It's exactly this combination that creates something like an itch. The brain's prediction almost works out, but not completely. And this small mismatch keeps pulling attention back to the fragment, again and again. It's a bit like a word that's on the tip of your tongue. The brain doesn't just give up and move on. It quietly keeps searching for the missing piece. Recent exposure to the song matters too. It's enough to hear it, even in the background, even for a few seconds, and the chances it'll come back later go up, sometimes hours later. You don't even have to consciously notice it. The brain can still tag it as recently heard, possibly important. A few seconds of a chorus from a passing car can be enough to plant that seed. And it gets even stranger from here. This internal replaying isn't just a metaphor. Brain scanning research shows that when a person experiences an earworm, the auditory regions of the brain activate, the very same ones that work when you're actually hearing music. In other words, as far as a large part of your brain is concerned, you're genuinely hearing this song. There's no speaker, no microphone, no sound wave reaches your ear, but the auditory cortex runs a process very similar to what it would if the music were actually playing. Neurologist Oliver Sacks, who spent many years studying unusual phenomena of the brain, described this kind of internal music as a very common occurrence. He also distinguished it from the much rarer musical hallucinations, in which a person, often with hearing loss, perceives music as if it's coming from somewhere outside them. With an earworm, it's different. You know it's not a real sound. You understand the song is coming from within your own head. But the mechanism doing the playing doesn't seem to care much about that distinction. It runs the same familiar process, just not outward, but inward. The brain doesn't just remember the song the way it remembers a fact. It replays it internally. And this connects to a phenomenon you might recognize from a completely different area: unfinished tasks. There's a well-known effect. Unfinished tasks hold on in memory more strongly than completed ones. An item you haven't crossed off your to-do list nags at you far more actively than one you've already closed out. It's as if the brain puts a tag on it. Don't archive, keep active. This effect is often called the Zeigarnik effect, named after the researcher who studied it back in the 1920s. She noticed that waiters in a restaurant remembered the details of unpaid orders better than those that had already been closed out. As long as a task remained open, the brain kept it on standby. The moment it was completed, the brain let go of it almost immediately. Later, it became clear that a similar principle could apply not only to a restaurant bill, but to a 4-second musical phrase. Now apply that to a melody. A phrase that almost resolves but not quite looks to the brain like an open task. The pattern started, but it never got its resolution. And the brain keeps the loop going, quietly, in the background, as if waiting for an ending that never arrives. That's why earworms are usually made up of short fragments, not entire songs. The brain doesn't replay the whole track. It returns specifically to the fragment that didn't feel finished. But then another question arises. Why is the brain built this way at all? Why do we have a system that's so easily hijacked by an advertising jingle or 3 notes of a song heard in a waiting room? The most honest answer: this system was almost certainly not built for pop songs and advertising tunes. Long before recorded music existed, the human brain already needed to be very good at 2 things: recognizing sound patterns and holding on to them. A particular bird call could mean something. A particular rhythm of footsteps could mean something. A repeated signal from someone in the group, danger nearby or food this way, needed to be remembered precisely and recognized the next time, even if the sound was quiet, partial, or mixed in with other noise. A brain that could grab a short sound pattern, store it, and keep it ready for future recognition had a real survival advantage. The very systems that let you recognize a song from just a few notes after 10 years are likely repurposed versions of older mechanisms built for recognizing important sounds in the environment. Modern music, with its hooks, choruses, and easily memorable phrases, taps into this old pattern recognition system to some degree. A catchy chorus isn't catchy by accident. It hits exactly the kind of short, repetitive, slightly unfinished sound pattern that the brain has learned to grab and hold on to. So when a song gets stuck in your head, it doesn't mean your brain is broken. It's running an old command. Hold on to this pattern. It might be important. Once, that command could have helped your ancestors remember the sound of a predator or a signal from someone in the group that food was nearby. It's just that today, the most common important sound pattern the environment hands your brain is a 30-second chorus from a supermarket ad. So, what actually stops an earworm? Williamson's research, along with later studies, gives a fairly consistent answer. The loop usually ends when the brain gets the resolution it was missing, or when something else takes over, something demanding enough to occupy that same mental space. One well-known study found that even chewing gum can reduce how often earworms occur. And it's not that gum has some magic effect. Most likely, chewing engages some of the same subtle motor and speech systems the brain uses when it sings a melody internally. When that system is busy with something else, even something as small as chewing, there's less room left for the musical loop. There's another pattern too. People report earworms more often during periods of stress, fatigue, or distraction. That's exactly when working memory is less stable and the small repeating pattern can more easily slip in and take hold. It's very much like an opportunistic process. The system grabs a pattern the moment some free space opens up, whether or not you wanted that company. Other research also suggests that sometimes it helps to simply listen to the whole song, to let it actually finish. Once the pattern reaches its end, the brain has nothing left to poke at. It resembles other unfinished mental loops. Just as writing down a nagging thought can quiet it down a little, singing or humming a song through to the end, out loud or even just in your head, often helps close out an earworm. The pattern gets its ending. The open file finally closes. It's not so much about forcing the song to stop, it's more about letting it finish. So, the next time a song loops in your head for 6 hours straight, it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You're just running a very old, very powerful pattern recognition system. A system built to grab short, meaningful, slightly unfinished sounds and hold them in working memory until they either resolve or get pushed out by something strong enough to take over. It's just that today, instead of a warning signal somewhere out on the savannah, it's the chorus from an ad you heard this morning. Same old pattern, just a completely different soundtrack.